Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Justin Cooke. Welcome to Nordics Skating on the Edge. I'm delighted to have a Nordics Plus panel with me today, representing, in no particular order, from a country perspective, we've got Norway, we've got Denmark, we've got Estonia, and we've got Finland. But really, we've got a number of global businesses, which I think is kind of one of the points that I think we're going to talk about today. So the Nordics has been sort of a testbed for new technologies for some time now. You know, there's a long history of user experience-driven consumer products that have gone global: Spotify, Skype, Mojang, Rovio, Supercell, etc. Now this consumer sort of UX-facing product culture is now spreading into edtech, where consumers, both students and teachers, are keen to test new products. And educational budgets are shifting to digital spend, and there's real pressure to deliver outcomes, as we've heard throughout this conference so far. And countries like Finland are also global pioneers when it comes to innovative learning methods and curriculums, such as the phenomenon-based educational system that's being adopted across the country, which has moved sort of from subject to topic-based learning. And the Nordics also realize that there's a real need to push for STEM, and additional budgets and efforts are being directed to make science more accessible. In Sweden, there are projects such as Diamond Mathematics and Lifta, which are aiming to enable educators and students to better understand knowledge gaps and address them adequately. And with more financing going into technology in general in the Nordics, it's no surprise that great startups like the ones we have here today are emerging. And without any further from me, I'd love to sort of introduce you to the panel. So, Craig, could I start with you?
Absolutely. Thank you, Justin. My name is Craig Narveson, and I work for Kahoot. I serve as the VP of Content Partnerships. Kahoot is a late-stage startup. We were founded in 2012 and soft-launched at South by Southwest EDU in 2013, and then launched in September of that same year. We are a free learning and entertainment platform. We offer the ability for our users to create quizzes and play them in a live setting, which typically is in K through 12 classrooms. And that being said, it's also used in other venues. In Norway, there's hardly a party that you go to or an event, cultural event, where there also isn't a Kahoot that's taking place. And since launch, we have spread to, now I believe it's 206 countries around the world. The platform allows for our users to create quizzes in any language, and play them in a live format. And just this past fall, we released our mobile app. So now teachers, or any creator for that matter, can send challenges to people, and the recipients of the challenges can play in a single player format. In my role in particular, I encourage partnerships with content owners who are looking to find a way to kind of reach the now 70+ million unique monthly active users that we have around the world, approximately 60% of which are in the US. We are a Norwegian company, as you mentioned, and our platform is based on pedagogy and code that was developed by our CTO and co-founder Morten Versvik. And we're proud of our heritage. I'm American, but I live and work in Oslo, so I do have kind of a unique perspective, I think, in terms of what makes Kahoot truly unique, and how it has found kind of something very special in its ability to cross not just to the US, but around the world.
Thanks. Matt.
Thank you. My name is Matt Bonde. I founded a company called Labster. I started also in 2012. And the way we came about is that I did part of my degree at Harvard Medical School in Boston. And one of the things that really shocked me going there was that they had exactly the same challenges as we had back in small Denmark. They had very high quality students and high quality teachers as well, but the models were the same. Based on that, we developed a prototype early 2012, and then we launched that and developed virtual labs in collaboration with partners like MIT and Imperial College. So students anywhere in the world, also developing countries, can go into a virtual lab and get access to, say, $1 million lab on their laptop and now in virtual reality as well. And we're now in many different countries globally with more than 100 university partners that are using us to bring degrees online and also to really increase the learning and motivation of the students.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mait, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Lingvist. At Lingvist, we are building the technology to make human learning 10 times faster. First, we apply this technology on languages. Later, we want to apply it to broad education. And the way I came about with this idea was that I was working as a nuclear physicist for almost 10 years at CERN, the Center of European Nuclear Research. And our team discovered the Higgs boson. After the discovery, I started to think whether I could use my AI expertise to something else, and I was particularly interested in making me to learn French faster. So I built a prototype for myself, and I met the technical co-founder of Skype, and he was so blown away that he basically pushed me to make a company, and now we have been around for 4 years. There are some universities who have made studies that actually people who are using Lingvist, they learn 4 times faster. We think that as it's working on big data, then it's just the beginning. We think that it's possible to make people to learn 10 times faster, and if we have nailed it for languages, then we can take it to the broad education. Currently, we have 1.5 million users, 35 employees. We're raising the Series B round, and we believe that we can make human people to learn much faster using artificial intelligence.
Paulina.
Hi, my name is Paulina Tervo, and I'm the co-CEO of Lifta. We're an early-stage startup from Helsinki, Finland. And here in the audience is also my other CEO half, Serdar, who also founded the company with me just under 2 years ago. So Lifta is a cross-curricular platform for immersive real-life stories, available on computers, tablets, and VR headsets. And at Lifta, we capture the hearts and minds of children by inviting them to explore real environments and emotionally engage with inspiring human stories. And so with Lifta, you can transport yourself to, for instance, Ethiopia, and you can explore a fascinating village built on gender equality. You can dive backstage at the Finnish National Opera and Ballet and meet the humans who work there. Or you can sit down and dine with different families from different backgrounds. So with all these stories, children gain exposure to people who they might otherwise never get to meet. And with the virtual reality experiences and the short stories of the people, they get to empathize with the people much more. So with these immersive stories, we've also built a number of engaging lessons and activities that the teacher can then use to introduce and to exemplify lots of different skills, values, and phenomena that might otherwise just stay on a page. So instead, we lift them up and we bring them to life. So Lifta is based on Finland's new phenomenon-based curriculum, and we teach skills like collaboration, critical thinking, resilience, integrity, and creativity. And these are all like soft skills, and teachers like to teach them, but what does it really mean? What is a soft skill? What does resilience or integrity actually look like in real life? And this is where Lifta comes in. We really exemplify that. For the teacher, Lifta is an array of high-quality content and lessons they can use to introduce global issues. And for kids, it's just a fun, game-like exploration where they meet real people in real environments. Lifta has got a lot of traction recently in UK and Finland, and we are in 300 primary and secondary schools at the moment, and 95% of those schools are in the UK.
Thank you very much, folks. I think starting off really, you guys are building these great businesses, and they're global businesses from what appears to be sort of day one. You've all rattled off how many 100 countries you're in and so on. It feels like to me that there's some sort of magic in the region, the Nordic magic. Could you give me your view? Why is it that the region has kind of this track record of building these great businesses, and how is it that you've managed to do what you've done? What are the factors that you think are kind of relevant that have enabled you to build the businesses you have? Craig, do you want to start?
Well, you work for North Zone, which was one of our investors.
I should say that, yeah.
So, but investing is part of it. I think it's a major part of the story because we at Kahoot have investors that are focused on not necessarily near-term profitability, but longer-term impact. And with that type of mindset, it's much easier to develop audience appeal and focus on generating users in our case, and then finding a way to manage those users and others into more of a monetizable proposition. So I think it starts with investing, and I think there are also, again, being American but living in Norway and working for a Norwegian company that has now this global appeal, I've kind of tried to understand it myself a little bit. And in looking around Oslo in particular, there are several what we would call technology hubs that are more typical in Silicon Valley, but they exist in Oslo in a very real way. And so Oslo as a city is attracting a lot of even foreign students who are interested to participate in a lot of early stage companies. And Kahoot came out of that environment. So those are just two areas I can speak to.
Mads, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I would say that for us it was more, you look at Denmark and there's really 7 universities there. It's just so obvious that if you want to do anything ambitious, you need to go global from the beginning. And that's obviously different from, for instance, in Boston, where there's 7th university. You can really do a lot just in the city that you start in. And I think that mindset really changes just the foundations for people starting out. Another thing in relating to education is that I think in the Nordic region in general, there is not so much teaching to the test as we see as the US. It's more about the concepts, the process understanding, etc. I think a lot of people growing up with that can bring that to education technology, and that makes a big difference as well.
Mait.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing for Estonia, that Estonia is even smaller than Denmark. And from the day one, you have to think about the global business. And as we come from Soviet Union, then 20 years ago, there was a lot of hunger to do something outside of in the global scale. And as Skype was developed in Estonia, then it has a really good impact to the whole ecosystem, because probably it's not very widely known, but the technical co-founders of Skype, they were actually classmates. And if there is a core team who's working really strongly together, and they developed a really good systematic approach to software development, and this legacy has been helping to grow other companies as well, because they have taught these good systematic skills to other developers. They have recruited great guys, and they have taught them, and now there are many companies who actually rely on the original Skype developers, as Lingvist do.
Paulina.
Wow, I think so much good has been said here, and I think Finland is another small country where we have to immediately think of the global market. In terms of education, I feel like the really big benefit of being in Finland is that teachers are really open to co-creating with companies. So we have this real culture there that is about having a shared vision for education in Finland, and to that we have actors like the schools, but also the Agency for Education, the ministry, companies, and we're sort of driving towards that shared vision. And the resources are amazing. I mean, the level of education is very high, it's free, and we are supported also by public funds in Finland. So for startups, I think it's a good place to start from.
As startups, breaking out can be costly and time-consuming. And I'd really like to kind of hear from you all about how you're actually sort of going to market, and how and who you're partnering with, as sort of whether it's early sort of champions and supporters, or sort of latest sort of more scale-based kind of relationships. It'd be really great to kind of hear how you've gone about that sort of. Mads, should we start with you?
Definitely. Partnering has been key for us throughout the journey. What we did early on was partner with universities to help co-create the content with professors from MIT, for instance, and also the underlying mathematical models. And then we later on partnered with researchers who have done research on what is actually effective learning. And that has been a core driver for us throughout to say, there's a lot of things you can do that sound advanced and cool, but we really focused only on what drives learning and what drives motivation. And how can we relentlessly go towards that? And if that means using something simpler, that's just great. And that kind of partnership has helped us assessing that. The other kind is that we recently signed a partnership with Pearson, one of the biggest publishers globally, where we're going out to millions of students here in the US, jointly with their biology program. I think that kind of partnership can greatly accelerate the exposure and bring some of the innovative technology out with some of the more, I could say, existing traditional materials.
Paulina, you've made the sort of the leap from Finland to the UK, and tell me about sort of your sort of early stage kind of partnering.
So in the UK, we also work with Pearson, and we were selected as a partner in this global learning program that's been going on in the UK for several years now. And through the global learning program, we've been able to reach out to many schools around the country. We've also partnered with associations like the National Association for Head Teachers and Whole Education, who've also allowed us to promote Lifta in their networks. Aside from that, we've engaged with educational thought leaders, and they've immediately understood what we're trying to do and bought into our vision, so they've promoted Lifta in their networks. So that's helped with the traction in the UK for sure. And in Finland, we have different kind of partnerships which also help the traction, but they're slightly different. So we have partnerships with, for instance, Dell and Samsung Nordic, and now recently with Atea, which is a network provider. So they sell networks and hardware to schools, and this is the first time they also included a software in their package. So schools can now have Lifta when they buy the network and all the equipment for the school. So these are some of the kind of partnerships we have.
Craig.
Well, I want your contacts at Pearson because I haven't yet been able to develop a partnership with them. No, but I think the approach that Kahoot has taken has kind of evolved. And it's one in retrospect looks like a blended partnership approach. We partner with major companies like Google, Microsoft with the integration into their Office 365 Microsoft Teams product. With Apple, they'll be releasing the schoolwork app in June. We're part of the apps that are part of that. And also with emerging companies, which are quickly emerging and I think really strong, like Remind, where now we can have teachers quickly send a challenge, a Kahoot challenge, through the homework product itself. So in that way, we're looking at different types of companies. And we're also looking at content partnerships, which again is my specific role in the company. So looking at companies that own content and are aligned in mission. So for instance, if you go on the Kahoot platform today and you are a US teacher, you have an account on Kahoot as a US teacher, you will see that we're collaborating with code.org. And what we are trying to do, of course, is very much in line with what they're trying to do. We're trying to help educators teach and students to learn. So we're helping teachers become aware of the fact that code.org is offering free professional development classes for teachers of any subject to become proficient in computer science. So those types of partnerships are also very important for obvious reasons. And I would guess the challenge in partnerships is that our audience is educators, and in that way, schools. But most content partners right now are focused at the deal, and that's done at the administrative level, not necessarily the teacher. So there is a bit of misalignment right now, but there are certainly companies that see the opportunity that Kahoot offers relative to distribution. And we, of course, want great content delivered through our platform, and that comes from content partners.
You talked in your introduction about sort of being 4 times more effective from memory. How do you sort of overcome that challenge that Craig kind of alluded to there, where you've got your educators, but you've sometimes got a sort of different audience, a different segment that you've got to kind of get to the administrators, the procurement people. How have you kind of overcome that? How do you do that in your go-to-market strategy?
We are primarily consumer product. Actually, we just built it initially as a consumer product, but now it seems that some schools have organically started to use it, and we have to build something for the schools so that they can easier to use it. But from the partnership point of view, the partnerships could work and they could not work. We have both experiences. One partnership that we're very happy about is a company in Taiwan, which has been working out amazingly well. And such kind of partnerships, they basically rely on those people that are supposed to make it happen in the company that is partnering up with you. If you just sign a deal, then actually nothing will happen. And for a startup, it's very fascinating to get a really, really big corporate partner. They are hoping that they will have a lot of traction based on that, but quite often it doesn't actually happen. So for our strategy is to rely more on our own organic growth, and we have not done much to make our product really viral yet, because Kahoot is inherently viral, because you have to invite some friends to play the quiz game with you. Our product is more like a personal learning, but there are definitely many things that we can do to bring this organic growth higher.
So partnerships not part of the strategy?
The partnerships are not the main part of the strategy, although we have a couple of really great partners.
That's all you need, maybe.
I want to talk about measurement. And I think I'd really love to kind of hear from you all about what you consider to be sort of the most important KPIs that you track, the metrics that you use, and I guess then sort of also thinking about it from your customer's perspective in terms of what does success look like to your customers too. Who wants to go first?
I can go first. This is our core, because our DNA is very deep in measurement, because at CERN we were doing very, very complex measurements, and Skype was also very, very metrics-driven company. And when we started to build the educational company, we realized that if you want to improve something, then you have to be able to measure it, because if you can't measure, you can't improve. And this is the problem with many educational companies, that measuring how much people have actually learned, how much they remember in 1 week's or 1 month's time, it's incredibly hard. And if the companies can't measure it, then they measure something else. And by measuring something else, they actually drive the company to a completely different direction. The chief product officer of Rosetta Stone told me once that, you see, we're selling these yellow boxes, and only 5% of people opening this box. Only 5% of people opening this box.
Wow.
It doesn't matter what is in the box. And if we have a great change channel, then we can build a great company. But what's the point of this educational company who actually does not teach? And for us to overcome this fundamental problem has been to build technology which enables to measure learning very, very incrementally, so that if somebody learns something, he starts to forget it right away. And we actually have built technology which enables us to tell what the person knows in two days, 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, and so on. So that every incremental action that student takes, we can say how much you have learned, how much you will remember in the future. And if we sum it up for one person who has learned, then we know how much value we have delivered to this one person. And if we sum it up all over the users that we have, then we know how much value we have created to the world. And this gives us a really good advantage, because if companies, other companies cannot measure learning and we can, then we can build a product which takes the category, because we can do things that others can't do. We can, as we know about every minute of the learning action, what is the long-term impact, then we can make fast A/B tests and decide which product feature actually delivers more customer value. And in the larger scale, we can keep our focus in the real customer value, so that we make conscious choices whether to increase learning speed or increase retention. But finally, we want to maximize our impact to the students. And having this as a core metrics, I think, is a really strong thing.
So one thing that could be interesting to highlight there, one thing we've seen is that there's sometimes a gap between that focus on learning, which we also do tremendously, and then what they look at, for instance, from a university or university professor perspective. There was, I think it was an advisor to Bill Clinton, who already in the 90s said, the problem is that right now the teachers and the professors, they're delivering teaching, they are not focusing on the learning. And I think we still have that problem. So we come here with a product and look at all these research.
This is a fundamental problem.
How do you solve that?
Yeah, it's if you think about if you learn something, then you take an exam after a year, or sometimes you take an exam after 2 or 3 years, and then you get your results, whether you knew something good or bad. But it's a so long time scale that if you want to improve the learning methodologies, then you can't just have an iteration cycle which is 2 or 3 years. You will never have time to actually improve the product. So it's important to take this technology to very, very incremental level and be able to measure like an impact of 5 minutes or 1 day or 1 week at maximum. So this is what we think is a solution of improving the education.
Definitely. I mean,
Mads, your metrics, tell me about those.
Yeah, so I think I alluded to it a little bit before that the key metrics we're looking at is improvement of learning, but at the same time improvement of motivation of the students. And one thing that often happens with educational products is that these two things are seen as, say, pulling in different directions. And my favorite example is a math game I tried once, where you play the math game, you have to shoot your friends with laser guns, and then you spend 80% of the time on shooting, and then when you die, you have to solve a math problem. And you really don't want to solve that math problem because you want to go to play again. Of course, that's a great incentive to do the math problem, but it just makes it, you can say, even worse to do the math problem. And what we've really tried to focus on is how can we combine, so when you do something that's motivating, for instance, we've integrated these case stories, like you're a crime scene detective, then instead of wasting time talking to a detective about irrelevant things, you talk about what is DNA, how do cells divide, things that are relevant but delivered in all kind of different ways that are motivating. And I think that's a key for educational technology going forward, to use a variety of methods, but not wasting anyone's time. Because people do, when they need to learn, they do not want to waste time. And even if it's fun, they'd rather watch a TV series or play World of Warcraft if it's purely for the fun of it, most people at least. So when they're learning, they want to have the high learning effectiveness. That's incredibly important.
And when you're developing products which are sort of inherently immersive, VR, running simulations, how has that sort of affected the way that you sort of need to sort of measure and sort of ultimately prove kind of success to your customers?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, there's a standardized way of measuring learning, which is often like a multiple choice quest or a quiz or a more adaptive test that I'm sure you're using as well, which can work pretty well for conceptual learning and understanding, and we're using those. A recent study, I think it was last month, done on some of our simulations, was around lab safety. So basically, half of a group of students went into a went into a virtual reality lab. I'm so immersed now, I think about it as a real lab. Half of them went into the virtual reality simulation. Half of them had the traditional training on lab safety, which obviously people care a lot about that being good. Then after that, they took a multiple choice question, and we were a bit disappointed because they scored exactly the same. And that's, of course, not what we're here for. Then a week later, they went into the real lab, and they were tested on how are your real lab skills, how do you behave in a test situation when you get acid in your eyes or something like that. And then the VR simulation completely outperformed the other part. So that highlights another challenge in the system, that right now, you're testing based on one set of questions that's not really aligned with the real skills you need for the real world. And that gap is hard, because we cannot go out and then just sell and say, you'll score very low on the test, but look, you got all these skills. That's not how the world works, right? So what we're optimizing for now, at least in a transition period, probably a lot of years when the universities adapt also with the testing, we need to do both. We need to score high on the test, and we have the evidence for that. And at the same time, we need to sneak in things that actually improves, you can say, real world outcomes. And that's, of course, an interesting challenge to have.
Craig, how does Kahoot think about metrics, and what KPIs do you measure?
How do we think about metrics? We think about metrics, well, we think about metrics all the time.
Yep.
And there is so much that we can measure. I mentioned the monthly active user number. Of course, that's an important metric for investors. The number of countries we're in is also important, because it's important to see how relevant the product is and in which countries. We also look at our teachers' behavior, in particular our teachers' behaviors, how they are using the tool. At the end of the day, it's a tool. Over 95% or more of our content that exists in the platform, which now is over 51 million publicly available Kahoot games, are created by our users. And so we like to see kind of the social signals on those Kahoots that are left for the public to use, which ones are favorited the most, and to kind of take away elements from those and then share kind of learnings with the rest of our audience. So we also hear directly from teachers telling us how they've used the product, and we feature many of those stories in a blog that's available on the website. But it's really, at the end of the day, it's a tool. And what we're looking for are the cases where teachers and students, for that matter, are using the tool on a deeper level. So teachers using the tool to track performance over time versus just as a fun game at the end of a lesson, or to track formative or summative assessment. But teachers that are using it maybe with one class and not with another, or comparing scores from the previous year's class versus standardized test scores for the current year's class where they've used Kahoot. But the product itself is designed for what we call a learners to leaders pathway. So you can think of a student being the learner, of course, and they're playing a live Kahoot game on their iPad or smartphone in the classroom, and then the teacher can assign them a game to create on their own. And through that process, the student or learner becomes a researcher, a game designer, and then ultimately they present their Kahoot to the classroom. So this is a deeper engagement, and this is actually one of the most important metrics for us to track right now, because this is what is really going to drive the future success for the brand, we believe.
But do you define it as a core metrics or North Star metrics? Do you have one, like something that you want to maximize?
It would be, well, historically it's been monthly active users. And the way that we measure those is unique users, which we're able to measure through the device. That we were able to say this is a unique device versus another device. So that's obviously a core metric for us. And right now we are at 71 million, I think. Our goal is to be at 100 million by the end of this year. But yeah, that would be probably our core metric historically.
I'm just curious, sorry about asking questions in the view, but what are your core metrics?
Well, as we're slightly more early stage than you guys are, I mean, at the moment we measure traction and we measure engagement. So we measure, for instance, how much teachers are using Lifta on a weekly basis. We're trying to help them as well with new tools and tips on how to use it so that we can increase the usage. We also we have feedback, so that's another way we can measure our product. And one thing I'd like to mention is that we've developed a measurement for attitude change. And this is something quite new, and we've tried it in a few schools, and the results have been really amazing. So there's an assessment for teachers that they can take in a classroom where the kids look at 6 faces. They don't know who they are. They just have 6 different faces of different people, different cultures. And the kids then take an assessment to say, how much common ground can I have with each of these people, just by looking at the way they look. They fill out the form, then they get to have a workshop on Lyfta. So usually the workshop would last a whole day, but in some cases we've done it in a couple of hours. But in any case, the kids go and they meet the people. They explore their environment in 360. They watch the stories. They basically spend 10 minutes with each of the people who they've just evaluated. Then they come back to the second assessment. And the results are amazing because the people who they rated lower have actually risen really high. So now if I had the picture here, I would show you. It's amazing. But we did a test with 12 to 13-year-old kids in a very monocultural town in England, where the teacher was very concerned about the rising levels of hate speech and racism around the school, and she wanted to do this test. And actually the kids, when they did the test, they identified themselves most with a 55-year-old Arab taxi driver out of all the people, even though they were kids who were their age as well. So this was amazing, and we could really see that the fact that they got to meet the people increased the empathy towards them. So that's something we're hoping to roll out in more schools now.
So what hurdles do you see ahead, in the educational market? What are you facing? What challenges are you facing right now, and how are you trying to sort of overcome those? Mads, do you want to start there?
Yeah. So I would say one of the one of the big challenges is that a lot of the innovation that we have seen, that are still seeing today, or what is called innovation, is bringing some of the existing way of teaching or learning, for instance, a lecture, a textbook, etc., bringing that online. And while that makes it much more scalable, it's great to, of course, be able to offer that also in third world countries. It's fundamentally not that innovative. The innovation lies in using, you could say, videos online, etc., for something new. So I think a major challenge is to really be innovative. It's about taking all the available technology, also used in other verticals, like game development tools, like AI, a lot of those technologies, saying, okay, if we start from scratch, how can we use those technologies to develop something that really moves the needle, like 10x learning outcomes. But a challenge with that is that if you do that, it's not necessarily adapting to the way that people are doing it today at the schools and university, and therefore it might be hard to sell. So it's for all the companies operating in this, you can say, hybrid environment, where if you do something that's too innovative, it's maybe not going to fly unless you can really tailor it to the needs of today. And that's what we're struggling with all the time. We cannot, for instance, with the example I give for, it doesn't help us to really develop the skills in the students that they need afterwards if it doesn't fit in with the current models today. Then we're too far ahead. So I think that's a major challenge.
I was talking to a CIO last night of a major US university, and she was talking to me about, she still faces this challenge of the sort of perception of investing in technology versus investing in sort of more traditional sort of capital intensive kind of infrastructure, buildings, libraries. Is that a challenge that any of you guys have come across? Is that a perception that needs still to be worked on?
There are some, as we started from languages, then we have seen that many investors think that you cannot earn much money in language learning because there is a bad example, Duolingo, which intended to make language learning free. The business model didn't work because they thought that the initial business model was that people can learn for free, and they learn to a certain level so that they can start translating, and then they sell the translations. But what turned out that people never reached the level where they could start translating, and so the translation business didn't take off. And now, as they're a big company, which have not made money, it's like a warning sign of maybe you cannot make money in language learning. But if you look at close, actually, thanks to their core metrics, which is related to retention, they have not been focusing actually teaching languages. So it has transformed the company to be more like a game. So they are not actually in the language learning business, but they are in a game business. So What we think is that if we really make our technology work, and now we already see pretty good signs of it, then actually we can tip the language learning market so that it's like all of the products we have been in language learning market, they are a little bit below the level where you can actually start using the language. Because it's like web streaming services before the internet bandwidth was big enough. And when the internet got good enough, then the market tipped and YouTube happened. So I think this is something that is happening in language learning as well.
Craig, you've got this 100 million goal that you've outlined today. What are the challenges for you to get there?
Oh, it's a little different question than I was thinking about responding to. No, I think the goal is very attainable. And one thing I could have mentioned earlier when you asked about kind of, what is about the Scandinavian countries and in particular Norway, in my case with Kahoot, is the product itself. And I believe many, or if not all the products here, have a very kind of inclusive design as part of the core. We have done very little, actually, to innovate the core product that's used in classrooms over the past few years. And it's continued to grow. And I think it's because of this inclusive design, which is very much part of the Norwegian culture in the classroom, where you see students of all abilities in the same classroom learning together. And it's actually how the product was meant to be used, to bring students from the back of the classroom to the front of the classroom and be part of that learning process together. So I think that principle will continue to support use and new users in new countries around the world. But I think what we are also looking at is the idea of the divide between the technology that's available in classrooms and the technology, specifically Wi-Fi, that's in the homes of the students. Because we do have an app now which enables students to play homework challenges from their teachers or Kahoots that they create or just want to play on their own, but they don't have the technology at home. And especially when we're looking at countries outside of the typical industrialized set of countries, Wi-Fi at home is not so prevalent in many cases. So that would be one of our kind of biggest challenges, I would say, that we face to kind of continue that growth curve we're on.
Can I add briefly? I'm curious about, you mentioned the example with Duolingo about the monetization being a problem, even though they had a lot of users. So I'm so curious about your monetization.
We've been able to, I think, of course, we will always keep a product available for free for teachers, okay? But we've been able to kind of leverage the usage in the corporate setting to develop 2 monetizable products that are now being used by now. I think we have over 25% of the Fortune 500 that are using Kahoot in internal training, et cetera. So those products are premium products that offer additional features and functionality than the one that's available to free users on the platform. So we're trying to keep doing the right thing for teachers, and I think that's always going to be our North Star.
Education.
Correct, keeping the product free for teachers. Yeah.
Paulina.
Hurdles, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking there are many hurdles when you start, I think, in many ways. One is pricing model, for instance, and but the one I think I'd like to mention is that I feel that we're a little bit ahead of our time, not so much in a technological sense, but teachers are not used to having really premium, high-quality content that is also deeply rooted in the curriculum. So there's like, what is this? Can it be true? So we've had to work really hard in showing teachers and convincing them that this is real, this can be used in a classroom. So we've gone to every single event. In Finnish we say every single cat christening that we can find to talk to teachers, to meet them there, to sit them down for 5 minutes to show them our product. And that has then resulted in them being, okay, they can actually see that it's working, and then we get those people talking about it and then convincing others. So that's one hurdle that we've we've started to overcome, but we are still working on. And also the pricing being another thing, because we're offering a school-wide license model right now, and it works in the current markets that we are, but there's also a possibly need to think of new pricing models to bring in new customer segments. So that's something we're constantly talking about. What is the next thing? Where to move next? And yeah.
You've taken the words out of my mouth there, because we've got about 4 minutes left, guys. So what I really want to kind of hear from you relatively succinctly is kind of what's next. Where are you taking your businesses next? Do you want to carry on?
Carry on, yeah. So where we're taking Lyfta next, so we are focusing on making better tools for the teacher. So our product is being developed as we speak, and teachers will be able to have a smart search functionality where they can filter out the content that they need that is relevant to them, and then pull that content into a lesson plan builder, so that they can then start to make their own lesson plans and then share those lesson plans with their colleagues, so making their lives easier. And on the student side, we're making a new interface as well, where it will be more immersive, and children will be able to explore a globe full of stories that they can click into and explore. So there's 2 big projects going on, and we'll also be measuring learning much more, which is really interesting to hear what you guys are doing. So that's something, measuring the learning outcomes, and also looking at how we can reward the learning for the kids and make them want to come back to it. So this is in the pipeline.
Yeah, for us, it's simple really. We keep our focus on net learning. We want to prove next year that we can teach 6 times faster. And currently we're raising the Series B round, and within the next funding round, our ambition is to be the biggest language learning company in the terms of net learning, not in the terms of revenue, maybe not in the terms of registrations, but in the terms of the value added to the users. And then after that, we can start exploring how to expand our technology beyond languages, which is the bigger goal.
For us, the next big thing is really what we call Labster Builder, where we already have a version where it's possible in a simple browser to drag and drop and design simulations in 3D that deploys both to laptops but also to virtual reality. So putting that in the hands of both teachers and also universities. And we are in a number of dialogues now with universities that are looking to use our technology to bring courses in medicine, other related areas online. So that's what's next for us, I would say.
I mentioned earlier about kind of learners to leaders model, and we are going to be releasing a product that is very much in line with that. So much more focused on students and helping them in that kind of flow, if you will. So stay tuned. And we also have a number of major content partners that will soon be showcased.
I'm hoping for some sort of like, sneak kind of announcement, Craig. Are we going to get this? Any journalists in the room?
Not yet. No.
Listen, Craig, Mads, Mait, Paulina, thanks so much. It's been fascinating talking today. Thank you all very, very much, and good luck with all of your business. And thank you very much, guys, as well, for coming along and hearing. Thanks.